Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us on today's webinar with Gary Vasey, Alexandre Rezaee, and Ganesh Natarajan. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. The microphones will be on mute for the remainder of this webinar. If you do have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat section and we'll get through to them at the end of the event, either via email or directly to you. With that, I hand over to you, Gary. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So very quickly, the title of the webinar is Why Paying Too Much for ETRM is So Last Decade. And I'm Gary Vasey. I'm with Commodity Technology Advisory, and we cover CTRM through ctrmcenter.com, the place for everything CTRM. And I'm joined by two gentlemen here who will also briefly introduce themselves. Let's start with Alexandre.
Hello. Happy to be here. Thank you, guys. So I'm Alexandre Rezaee. I'm currently the Global Chief Risk Officer at Select Energy Trading. This is a international commodity trading shop based in Germany. I have close to 15, 16 years experience in the industry, working in the US, in France, Netherlands, and also Turkey. So I have been a practitioner across the board, different desks, not limited to oil and product. Also, I covered agriculturals, metals, dry cargoes, paper, physical, and I got to come across a variety of different systems, whether they are CTRM or ERPs. So I hope to be of good experience and value in this talk today. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Ganesh.
Hi, guys. My name is Ganesh Natarajan. I head up Enemy globally as their COO responsible for global operations. Been in the commodities tech world for the last 2 decades plus. Worked across different commodity segments, power, gas, oil, refined products, LNG, metals similar to Alex, but I've done different vendor solutions, worked with trading companies, rolled out and implemented different ETRM and CTRM systems in the marketplace. Glad to be here, Gary.
Okay, great. So let's get started and let's get to the nux of the thing. In the 20-odd years that I've been working in CTRM, we have seen competitive pressure on prices, but nonetheless, CTRM can get horrendously expensive, particularly if it involves a long implementation. And of course, recently we've seen the migration to software as a service in the cloud, and that seems to have done something on the cost side. So Ganesh, how has technology helped get CTRM costs down, in your opinion?
Well, I think both from a trading firm perspective or a vendor perspective, I think any technology investment is relevant to stay relevant. I would assume that, right? So for any vendor or being in a trading landscape, you got to keep investing in technology to stay relevant. It may sound like initially the technology cost or seems to be high when you're doing a technology upgrade or trying to invest in digital transformation, but it will definitely eventually pay off in terms of bringing in the architectural scalability, optimized hosting, and also from a vendor perspective, it's very, very easy for me to support my clients if I'm actually on the latest technologies. And that actually improve the customer satisfaction. So technology as a whole has been able to even out the cost of investment, but you need to have a little bit of patience to realize the benefits, both as a vendor as well as a practitioner.
Alexandre, what's your view on that?
Well, I'm pretty aligned. Definitely, the vendors keep on ramping up, on the technical side. So if you as a client are not even on par with the standards, then you're gonna have to incur extra costs to reach their hand. But if you are there already, obviously things get more efficient, less expensive. That's how I see it. That's how I have seen it.
We've also seen a move from more traditional sort of one-time licensing costs, support and maintenance, etc., to an all-in subscription. And sometimes I wonder, is subscription really cost effective? Because over time, of course, you will end up paying more, won't you, Alex?
Well, that's an interesting one because these are just different wording to describe something that you're going to have to pay, whether this is a subscription or licensing. That is not the most important questions. The most important question is to understand what do you subscribe or license for, because any solutions beyond the implementation, you're going to have to pay something. So it's important to understand what you are paying for, define it clearly, and the goal is to get bang for the buck, so you know what you're paying for in subscriptions, you know what sort of licensing is including it, what sort of support is including in it, and you make good usage of it. This is your target, because once you have found your gold product, the product that everyone is happy with, you can stay 10 years with them, and you have 10 years of subscriptions, and then it's a matter of renegotiation on a yearly basis. So this is going to happen. The most important question to address is whether that monthly or yearly subscriptions you pay for are properly used for, and they are properly tailored to you. That is the important question.
Right. So that's only part of the cost. Of course, you've still got implementation. So Ganesh, what about on the implementation and support side? How has new technology helped there?
Yeah, I think I want to pick up on what Alex said, right, in terms of subscription. I think just to choosing the right system is absolutely important. That's exactly where Alex is leaning towards, right? You are spot on about it. Subscription could be treated as an OPEX, and your implementation one-off cost can be treated as a CapEx in terms of one-time implementation. If I have to take a step back and take a very market view, right, most of the vendor solutions have the similar kind of capabilities, right? But I think the technology comes into play when you want to actually look at your capability from a functional perspective. How do you integrate with the client ecosystem? And also how much your architecture and your features are very flexible, which you're providing the configurability towards the clients to meet their custom specifications. So the times are gone in a way where the vendors are actually trying to take advantage of the clients to just say that, hey, everything is a change request, you touch and feel, it's going to additional money. I think those days are gone. I think people are asking for more for less. By having a very good technical solution underpinning a good architecture gives you the flexibility back to the power of the clients to configure the product without breaking the core product. That's where the technology comes into picture about how do you adopt any software you buy, be it anywhere or anything else. I think that's what I would just say. Technology comes into play. And also at a overall cost tipping point level, the better technology, the better releases, better upgrades. So you will actually even out your cost in rolling out changes and new capabilities on a long period of time for the customers and for you as a vendor.
That's where Alexander.
Yes, exactly my thinking is no, nothing to add on that part regarding to subscription or licensing, and
right,
well summarized.
No problem. We'll move along. Do you think that implementing practical artificial intelligence will reduce operational costs for the business using CTRM solutions, Ganesh?
I think the answer is definitely yes, right? In terms of looking at practical use cases for AI, I think AI has been a buzzword a couple of years before now it's reality. In my opinion, you have to look at the whole trading value chain in terms of predictive analytics, risk management, supply chain optimization, market surveillance. If you take a broad spectrum of things, AI could be very, very useful if you apply a specific use case to solve a particular problem statement. So my personal favorite, Alex can appreciate this. We have worked together in the past before, where we actually seen most of the operations, especially supply chain optimization. That's where people make a lot of mistakes in terms of too many people, too many papers, too many documentation, and managing the inventory levels. So supply chain optimization is one of the areas where managing the inventory and also cutting down your operational inefficiencies a lot. AI could be a very, very, very good value add in terms of actually providing that kind of a scalability and returns, in my opinion, especially in a physical cargo-based business like oil and defense products.
And are you guys using AI in any way to try to aid the user in terms of implementation, support, or whatever?
We are definitely trying to improve our product capabilities, especially on the scheduling and operations, on around supply chain optimization. where people have to really not look at in terms of how do I match this cargo to that. So this actually helps a lot of redundant work in terms of matching a cargo, adding the cost. And at the same time, we are also looking at AI in terms of automating the workflows pretty much across the product. But we want to make it relevant, useful, and within the ecosystem of the product rather than actually coming up with a big buzzword and then try to solve all the world's problem. Small incremental change could actually be a very good value add for people who are getting pain every single day from any other system.
Yeah, it seems to, we just completed a study on AI, and it seems to us that AI is being used to augment the user and supply the user with more quality and detailed information and analysis faster.
That's correct.
But allow them still to make the decision. Alexander, what's your thoughts on AI and cost and competitiveness?
Well, I gotta admit, we are not there yet in terms of using, but we have looked at it and we're looking forward. I think that on a day-to-day basis, a lot of operations, are doing repetitive tasks, that can change or modulate a bit according to some rules, according to some other circumstances, and we are looking forward to some sort of machine learning dynamics where things are a bit more automated there.
Right. On the implementation side, it seems to me that there are improvements in the way that these systems have been implemented, considerable improvements over the last decade or so, that also help to reduce cost and also improve the end result. Ganesh, any thoughts on that? Because I think it's important to think about that.
In terms of reducing the cost of implementation, you mean to say?
Yeah, the approach to implementation, I think we know the space a lot better, and with a highly configurable solution like Inuit, there's a lot of lessons that you guys must have learned over the last 10 years that now can be applied to smooth out the implementation process and keep those costs down.
Definitely, right? If you think about modeling various markets, right? So Inuit has been uniquely positioned in a way where we can actually handle 12 plus different commodities, physical commodities in a single product. But if you just take a European power and gas, it is European power and gas. If you take an international cargo oil, it's international cargo and oil. So what we are trying to do here is we are almost trying to come up with a prepackaged curves and market referentials, which is preloaded into the implementation, which actually cuts down a lot of time. Of course, there is always a specific customer nuances. Okay, I'm going to take a WTA curve, and then I'm going to baseline towards etc. in a location and stuff, mark the intent. Those things are different, but we are actually coming up with a very prepackaged, pre-configured, rather than a package with the sorry about the word, pre-configured solution where it can actually scale up and get you start putting the numbers and producing the numbers on day one. It's proven to be very effective that way, because if you just go to a client and do a demo of a product, however flashy it is, end of the day, they have to tie out their numbers. What's the best way to tie out the numbers? Take their most complex trades or their most complex portfolio, try to get a simple and a complex case, and then try to model in the system in day one, day two, and then let them evolve with the solution and then start understanding the system and how it produces numbers. If I can't tie out my final settlement value without actually getting the front office deals and pricing captured, then what's the point of a ETRM system, right? So we are trying to do that very efficiently in implementation. It gives us two advantages. One is we always walk into the implementation with the 80 to 90% fitment. I would just say 85 to 90% is the right word. There is always 10% which we don't know. There is always 10% which is very specific to a customer. Hey, Ganesh, I have this very unique accounting practice. I would like your CTRM to give me data for this format in SAP. Those things we cannot predict. It depends upon how you set up your books and how your accounting is set up. But predominantly of the different markets, we kind of have a view how to start the implementation faster and get it done faster. Alex is one of the examples where we have worked with them. I think I worked with them twice before this webinar, where we have actually rolled out very faster and effectively, and we also need a client sponsor like Alex actually to be there to say, this is what the system do, start putting your operating model with the system and then not change the system too much. Yeah. We need the hands to work together. Okay? That's where it stops. So.
Well, it's a good segue to Alex, because I was going to ask Alex next. You must have implemented a few systems, and yes, you must have learned some lessons along the way. So what hints and lessons learned would you provide people watching this?
Well, I will start with the easiest and then talk about the hardest. But for me, I mean, it takes two people to dance a tango, right? So you have on one hand the trading shop looking to implement a system, and then you have the vendor. It is very important to find a vendor who is transparent and not afraid to educate you and guide you and tell you every step of the way what is it that you're getting in for if you make such and such requests. So you must have a vendor who is able to tell you what is the right way to do things and what is the wrong way to do things, because they do have the perspective of other clients and other markets. So all the mistakes that other clients have done, they have seen it. And it's good when you are facing one vendor who is telling you, sir, do not take that road, you are heading for disaster. I say this because also it sounds like very natural. I can tell you I've come across vendors and consultants who do not tell you anything, who just let you go down the wrong path just to increase their billables. So that's the easiest one. Now, internally, from the client side, from my side, from my perspective, implementation, it is very important to make your scoping and definitions very clear on what it is that you want. You cannot be loose on the definitions and the targets. You have to be very precise. So I would say that more than the system, there is some homework to be done. If it's clear on the paper, if it's clear on your notebook, then it's not a problem for the vendor to implement it. So to answer to your question, what helps bringing the cost down is really the pre-work. You do not need to have a system tailored to reproduce every single thing that every single of your employees were doing on their spreadsheets. That's not what you need. You need to model first your businesses, then find some common denominators, and then you go back to the vendor and you say, okay, this is what I want. Can your system do it? And then you can bridge some gaps. But this is the way to come up with a healthy implementation. Healthy, efficient in terms of cost, fast. That's what I have to say.
Yeah. Now, when you're dealing with a highly configurable system, there's obviously a risk there of overcomplicating things. And then there's also the question of standardization. And this is an industry that doesn't necessarily do a great job at standardizing industry-wide, but internally you can standardize business processes and documents and all those kind of things. So what about standardization versus customization? Alex, maybe you start and we'll hand it over to Ganesh. Yeah.
Well, you can always customize, but this will bring you down to a certain road of inefficiencies and very high costs.
Yeah.
You can always put the money on the table and ask your vendor to customize this, such and such functions, and given the time and the money, they will come back with something. The problem is high level of customization not only means high level of time and money, but it's extremely inefficient in maintenance. When I hear customization, I hear about the big mistake that a lot of firms are doing, which is trying to reproduce their spreadsheets in the system. The sane road, the healthy road, is standardization. Okay. Yes, business lines and products do have their own peculiarities, their own specific. That is absolutely given. In particular, I would say when it comes to operations, scheduling operation. But the front end, the mid office, and the back office, pretty much, we're talking about the same thing. We are talking about mark to market. We are talking about costs, estimates, realizations, invoicing. These things, all the business, they have that as a common denominator. You standardize this. You do not need to customize for every single business. Spare the money for some room to customization, at the operations level. Okay. And that's what I would say. Customization is unavoidable, but you can keep it under control.
I think that's good advice. Ganesh, what would you say?
No, I think I'll give you my two dimensions on this one, right? I think I agree with what Alex said. What we can do from a product vendor perspective, like for example, right, if I am actually looking at a common set of requirements which needs, I'll take a simple example, digital invoicing for Italian markets, right? So we're basically saying that, right? So for me, if a client come back and tell, hey, Ganesh, I'm trading in Italian markets, I would like to actually do DocuSign or digital signature of e-invoicing. I rather take a first step and look at it from a vendor perspective. This is what we do in anyway. Hey, that's going to be like a core capability. There's no point in charging this customer to do this as a custom piece. So let's take some cost off the customer and then do it for him. But at the same time, we can reuse this capability. That's one way of standardizing and bringing down the cost low. There's one thing which I would want to bring it up from a dimension is historically, there are only two kinds of stakeholders in an ETRM or a CTRM system. Sometimes it's people like Alex, who are a chief risk officer, who drives and acts as a product owner, which makes it much more healthier when you look from a business standpoint of view. Sometimes in most of the organization, it's been driven by the CAOs and IT management, right? Which is okay from a lot of perspective, but still don't have a business perspective. But for the last 2-3 years, especially the standardization and the customization, also have a third party to the table, which is also a CFO. So if you think about it, the trading and risk operation system is also crossing the boundaries and providing some capabilities towards accounting. So even CFOs are becoming stakeholders into the mix. And that's where it's a great advantage and also a disadvantage, because somebody with a pure accounting mindset would try to change your system and trading operating model towards an accounting operating model, right? But the balance is, how does a chief risk officer like Alex works with their CFOs and or similar in the pattern? How do you bring the synergy between these cross departments? If you can bring IT, risk, trade ops, and accounting together, I think the cost can be absolutely managed easily because everybody starts speaking the same language. Right? And
that actually brings us to the next sort of thought, which is, does having one modular multi-commodity solution help with cost, or is it better to go with the ecosystem of different applications? But then you've got a much bigger integration set problem, I would imagine. Ganesh?
In my opinion, right, from a pure product perspective, I would just say the time is gone where people are trying to buy best of breed solutions. I would like an X system for this and Y system for this. The reason is not just the money, it's also talent to keep those things on their side, as well as then you would say, if I'm looking at from a CTRM perspective, again, I may come across as somebody biased, but I'm just saying that if I'm a practitioner looking for a perspective, I'm going to look for a CTRM system with a 80 to 90% fitment, which can solve my problems today and can even give me a horizon of 6 to 10 years. If I have the product capabilities, I have no necessity to go towards choosing the best of breed, which will only increase my 3 complexities. I have to maintain contracts with multiple vendors. I have to actually have internal teams with multiple skill sets. 3 years, I have to manage the conflicts in making all of these vendors work together from a practitioner standpoint of view. In that sense, having a modular solution which can cover multi-commodity is an easy no-brainer for me to actually adopt or implement. That's my perspective.
Okay, very good. And Alex?
Yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, I'm all for the one modular across-the-board solution. What Ganesh mentioned, I have seen it in all the different angles. It's I personally advocate to stay away from multi-solutions within the firm sort of profiles. You just end up with a multiple of everything. The systems are so different that not only will you need to run IT specialists internally that are you need to maintain them, for each of the systems, so you have multiple of them, but also, your operators and your middle officers. I mean, at the end of the day, middle officer and operator is an MO or an ops, and the problem when you have multiple systems is that they cannot cover each other. So, for instance, simple things as backup, holidays. You have the MO specialist on system A and you have the MO specialist on system B. These two are not interchangeable. So you just end up with a multiple of everything. And it's a nightmare. You're gonna need to integrate everything at the end of the day with your ERP. So that's just multiple integrations. It's extremely tedious. I mean, I have seen big firms with deep pockets doing it because they can afford to do that. But even with them being able to afford to do this kind of multi-vendor solutions, they just wear out. I mean, psychologically, morally, they are tired. They all wish that they could have only one solution, one team, one company to speak to.
Yeah, well, I think, as you rightly point out, it's already an integration problem because it's not just ERP, but it could be treasury and all kinds of other systems that you've got to integrate with already. So potentially all you're doing is adding points of integration. And I tell the story quite often back in the old days when I was with one of the vendors. This would be a long, long time ago. We sold them our solution, and they bought a risk solution from somebody else, and combined cost them like $300,000. And I went in one day to see how they're doing, and they told me they'd already spent over $1 million trying to make one work with the other. So I think it pays to avoid that kind of a scenario if you're trying to keep costs down. So in summary, any hot tips, any other thoughts that have emerged during the course of the discussion that you'd like to pop in before we finish?
Yeah, I would say really, it's again, it takes two to dance a tango. It's important to choose. I mean, I'm glad that I've met Inuit, that I came across their product. This is my second implementation in 2 different companies. I don't regret it. Everyone is happy. It's very important that you find a level of transparency and understanding and patience from your vendor. That's number one. Having a yes man sort of vendor is not going to help you. So that's one. Number two, you as a firm, as a training shop, it's very important that the pre-work is done. You need to rationalize on paper exactly what is it you need to achieve, what is your targets, how do you get there. It happens. I say 80% of the work happens on the paper. The rest is just coding.
Very good, Ganesh. No sound.
Sorry, I kind of absolutely resonate with what Alex said, right? There's one thing which is very clear is most of the companies, but you can choose the right product. You can have someone like Alex who is pretty much a risk leader in terms of telling exactly what he wants from the system, what he doesn't. But it's also important that sometimes the change management piece of how do you adopt a solution towards a client is left to consultants, not to the product vendors, not to the risk officers, who may not be well equipped to actually position the product against the target operating model because they actually don't know the client landscape, either they don't know the product. My proven personal thing is I have seen places where the product vendor directly works with the risk and the IT teams at the client side. Of course, you can work with the consulting companies to provide the change management, but change management cannot be like an internal or external function. Is a bunch of training slapped on together. It's more of a cultural change, which can only come from when all these 3 parties work together. And that's very important. I've seen the change management and adoption goes for a toss, even though we had a great leadership in the projects, both on the vendor side as well as the client side, because somebody did not actually understand the landscape in which the system is getting rolled out. I think if that dimension can be sorted out, most of the projects can be successful with minimal effort. That's my personal view.
Very good. Well, that's all we have time for. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.